All right, welcome to yet another episode of the Empowerment Perspective Podcast, Legacy Makers Edition. I go by the name of Dr. Damiso Josey, and as always, my sidekick, Symone Josey. How are you doing today, Symone?
I'm doing very great, loving the warm weather.
You did something with your hair, a little different. I like it. I like it. Okay. So in the previous podcast, we had Nikki T. She talked about fitness, and actually, she was all over the place with some mental health stuff. What did you think about that podcast, and what did you get out of it?
I definitely thought that was a very interesting podcast because when you told me we're gonna interview this fitness expert, I was like, okay, she's gonna teach us how to like lift weights and stuff like that. But then she actually got talking about like the psychological part of fitness, and that was very interesting to me.
I think a lot of people don't realize that there's that psychological, the psychological element is probably more important than the actual physical element of any fitness regimen that you do. So I think that was pretty dope that she talked about that the last time. But on this particular podcast, I had to reach down deep in my bag, and this young lady that I'm going to introduce, we actually went to elementary school together, went to middle school together, and high school together. And now she's doing some wonderful things in the field of education. Welcome to the show, Tina Dare. How are you?
Excellent. I am so happy to be here. So I am glad you reached deep down in order to find me and invite me on. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to let Simone do her thing as always. I'm going to step back and let her take over this interview. So Simone, it's all on you.
Okay. Okay, well, first I want to thank you for joining us today. I know that you have a very busy schedule and you're such a famous woman, I heard from what my father says. So, and I just want you to like tell us all I know you're part of the education what would you call that? Education firm or something like that?
The union, the New Jersey Education Association. So I am absolutely a huge part of my union. I think that is such important work. And I think that all people, that have unions should be a part of it and work towards, doing everything they can to move their organization forward. So I am a part of the New Jersey Education Association union.
Now that's very interesting. So can you tell us how like you started off? Did you start off like as a teacher and like how you got to grow? Basically?
Absolutely. So I am still currently teaching in the classroom. So I do my union work at the same time that I do my teaching work. So I am a 26-year high school chemistry teacher. And I think that's where my passion really started is I love teaching. I love high school and I love chemistry. And to me, it was always important that I wanted to train the next generation of scientists. So I actually started out where I was going to go work in the field of chemistry. I had no desire to teach. I wanted nothing to do with teaching. I come from a family of educators. My mom was a 42-year second grade teacher. And she said to me, it is so important that we train the next generation. And she talked me into becoming an educator instead of going the route of becoming a chemist in a lab. And I always say, as much as I curse her, I also thank her because I really believe that that is our most important legacy we can leave behind is training that next generation. So I started off as a chemistry teacher, still working in the classroom. Like I said, it's my 26th year there. But I think what moved me more in toward the advocacy and the union work is seeing things that I thought were really unfair when it came to our educators. So jumping back to my mom, she always said to me, become an educator, one, to train the next generation. She said, two, you will have a great pension. She said, three, you will have health care. And she said, the thing that everybody always thinks is you'll have summers off as an educator. And I think about those three things now in the field that I'm in, and we don't have as good of a pension that we had in the past. There's actually a tiered system, so many of our educators won't get a good pension when they retire. Healthcare, we now pay a large part of our healthcare. And when we talk about summers off, most educators can't afford to take summers off because we don't get paid and therefore we can't afford to pay our bills. So the three reasons well, she said four, but three of the four reasons she told me to go into public education aren't really there for our members anymore. So that really pushed me to become a stronger advocate for public education and for those that work in public education because I want the best for every single student in New Jersey, which means I want the best educators in the classroom. And we get the best educators when we have things like a good pension and good health care. Those are important features to keeping good educators.
Now I'm gonna ask you to backtrack a little bit and like explain to us really what is a pension, because like oh, you're talking a lot about it, but I really had no idea what that even means.
Listen, I love talking about pensions because I think it is something that, a lot of even younger members coming into the profession don't think about. Because when you get your first job, you're just excited to get a first paycheck. So you are not thinking about retirement at all. So a pension is something that over time you pay into. And as a public school employee, the state pays into it so that when you retire, you get a check in retirement in order to survive. So we look at it as we've given up certain things as public educators. Maybe we don't make as much as you do in the private sector because we know that we're going to have this retirement check, that's our pension, when we do go to retire. So I think of it as money is being put in by us and by the federal government in order for when we retire, for us to collect on that in order to be able to retire with dignity. Because we know so often that if you don't have enough money when you go to retire, you have to get a second or third career because you can't afford to live. So educators have given things up when it comes to our salary in order to get these pensions in retirement.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So
Yeah. Listen, I talk to educators all the time, so sometimes I forget to use these terms that we don't use all the time. So thank you for calling me out on that.
now I'm gonna ask you, as like a union worker, do you like what do you focus on? Do you focus on the teachers or the students, or like what's up with that?
So I think that's one of the beauties of the New Jersey Education Association is that we actually focus on all those things. So to me, when you have great educators in the classroom, that's going to help our students. When you have bus drivers or secretaries or custodians working in the building, that's helping our students. So making sure that we have enough people in our building wanting to go into this profession is absolutely helping the students. But the great thing about NJEA is we actually also focus on other things that are helping our students, making sure that there are policies and that there are laws that are going to help our students. So the union doesn't just work for educators, it works for our public schools, it works for our students. A good example of that is funding in schools. If we don't have enough funding in our schools, then programs can't run, educators can't be hired. So NJEA fights really hard to make sure that our schools are being funded properly. And if they're not, we fight in order to make sure that happens because we don't want to see our students not get the resources that they truly do deserve. So we fight in all directions, which I think is what I love so much about a union.
Yeah, I think that actually that's amazing too, because it's like such a good thing to see a lot of like people caring about the students and the students' education. Um Now also there's like this really big, we all know the really big shortage of teachers and like staff members in the school. So what do you guys do to help with that?
So I think right now one of our big pushes in order to do that is to make sure that we talk about this pension problem. So we kind of revisit that for a second because no one wants to go into public education if you don't have certain things, if you don't have the health care, the pension, and a paycheck that you think is adequate, you're not going to go into that profession. So we are truly seeing a shortage right now when it comes to the educational field. And I'm not saying the pension is the only thing that will fix it, but I think it is a huge part because people that were hired back when I was, so 26 years ago, I can retire with my pension at the age of 55 and collect this pension in retirement. But people that are hired now can't retire until they're 65. And if they retire early, they take a 30% hit on the amount of money that they would collect. And that is a huge amount. So we're seeing people that are coming into the field, they're saying to themselves, wait a minute, I have to work until I'm 65 in order to retire with dignity with this pension. and the pension they will collect will be much smaller than the one that I'll collect. So we're seeing people come in, they see how difficult this job is, and they say, wait a minute, I got to work till I'm 65 and I'm not going to get as good of a pension. I'm jumping ship and I'm going to another field. So that to me is one of the main things that we can do to help bring people into this profession. Again, not the only one, but I think it's huge. And honestly, if I'm thinking about what I want to do in life, if I'm in college right now and I'm saying, wait, I can go into the chemistry field or I can go be an educator, and I'm seeing how tough it is in the education world, and I'm seeing this pension issue, I'm picking the private sector every single day of the week. We want the best here in New Jersey, so we need to make sure that we're getting people into the field, and pensions are a huge part of that.
Now, when you say like many people who are starting now, they get like lower pensions, so they wouldn't want to like be teaching. To help with those pensions, does the government like provide money for those teachers?
Yeah, so the way a pension is funded is I pay a part of it and then the state pays a part. And one of the things that we've noticed is that for many of the past governors, many of them, they have not paid their portion into our pension system, which created the problem that we're in right now. So it is so important that we elect pro public education legislators, pro public education governors, because we want to make sure that our pension is being funded. So it really does come back to we want to make sure that the promises we've been made, the promise of a pension is actually there for us. Because for years, the governors didn't pay into this pension system. And what happened was it started to it was eroding. There was no money left in it. So we have to make sure pro public education candidates are elected.
Now, moving on to like the funding of schools, where does that money come from, and how do you like figure out like which department to put it in?
Yeah, so the funding comes from taxes. That's a huge part. And the federal government has a formula. They decide how much money goes to each district. So what happens is during the budget season, so right now when we talk about the budget for New Jersey, the governor gets to decide and talks about how much money they want to put into school districts, into our pensions, into, roads, into transportation. So the federal government has a formula where they decide how much money each school district gets. And then the school district gets to decide where they want to put that money. Do they want to put it into programs, into hiring more staff, into, whatever they're doing in their district? But that money comes from taxes, and the federal government gets to decide how much money goes to each district.
So, as a union worker, do you have like any say on like where that money goes to, like throughout the schools and stuff?
So we don't necessarily have a say, like we get to decide, but we do have a say by, to me, the most important thing is using our voice. And that's not just in unions. That to me is across like our entire society. When we're unhappy with something, we all need to stand up and say we're unhappy. And to me, that's the great part about being in a union, is that you have a unified group to come together and say, we're not happy with what's happening. So when schools are underfunded, we as a union go and talk to legislators. So we call them up and we tell them, like, we're not happy with the fact that you're not funding our schools, because we know this squeaky wheel, that's who gets the attention. So we know that we have to call our legislators. We have to have those conversations. And when it comes to our own districts, talking to our superintendents, letting them know we're unhappy. Because to me, if we all sit silent, then nothing changes. So the most important thing is that we all speak up when we see an injustice happening. And that's the same when it comes to school funding. So as a union, we need to stand up when we see that.
So now you work with do you work with like all the schools in New Jersey, or all the school districts?
So I have a very unique position right now, I would say. So again, my day job is teaching chemistry. My nighttime work is I am the chair of government relations for NJEA. So that is an appointed position by the president of the New Jersey Education Association. They appoint someone in order to sit in the seat as a member who works with any type of government relation things across the state. So therefore, I work with locals and with leaders from all the way up in Sussex, all the way down to Cape May County. So it really gives me a unique perspective of what's happening in all these districts and all these counties across the state. So I sit as the chair of the government relations, and then each county has two representatives that sit on that committee. So that allows us to kind of meet, talk about issues, talk about candidates, talk about anything that deals with government, and be able to get that information out to other members across the state. It also allows us, if we see something bad, we can bring it to that group, we can talk about it, we can talk about how to move forward and how to create change.
Okay, so you said that you're a teacher and you are also like part of this union. So being like you said like the chair member, what do you need to do that? Like how did you get to that role?
So, luck, no. So I think it's one of those things like it's right place, right time. It's surrounding yourself and learning more. So I'm a firm believer in getting out there. And when I see something I'm unhappy with, I always try and become a part of it. And I think so often it's easy to shy away and say, not my problem. I don't like what's happening. Whereas my outlook has always been if I'm unhappy, I want to immerse myself into it to learn what's going on to bring about change. So I, I think a lot of times it's somebody asks, somebody says, "Hey, would you like to be a part of this?" And so what happened was I started at small. I started at the local level where I started just learning about bargaining contracts. And then I became part of my county group. And they said, "You would be great doing work with government relations." So I became part of the county organization. And then from there, did a lot of work. The president of the New Jersey Education Association appointed me into this position. So I've been sitting in this position now for 8 years. So the past NJEA president appointed me here. So I think it's one of those things, right time, right place, and also being willing to try something new and different and wanting to be a part of the change.
Now, does this for this type of job, do you have to have like a different degree when in college compared to like just teaching?
No, so I think that's the awesome thing also about union work is that anyone can do this work. You don't have to have a specialized degree or a specialized, something special in order to do it. You just have to have the willingness to want to be a part of your union and work to make the union better. So our union is made up of not just teachers, but also our support staff. So it's made up of custodians and secretaries and cafeteria and security and every group of bus drivers, anyone you can list that works within a school system is part of this union. So someone who is a custodian who's really passionate about government relations and the laws that govern us, they can also be a part of this. And sitting on my committee, I have a gentleman who is part of the maintenance department, and he represents his county when it comes to the government relations work. So it is no special degree. It is just that you are passionate about your union.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. You have like a whole different diversity group among you guys. Now, I'm gonna like backtrack a little bit and you said that you are a teacher and you also like work with all of these different schools. So I'm gonna ask you, what do you think like the biggest like struggle for schools now is, or like the biggest problem in the schools with like either the teachers or the students or anything?
Biggest struggle right now. Well, I don't want to be redundant, so I'll try and think of a second one because I'm sure there's many. But honestly, the biggest thing that worries me right now is the shortage. It's the shortage of teachers and support staff because what we're seeing is that when we don't have enough educators, we turn to online. And online, we know after COVID is the least productive way in order for our students to learn. And the problem is if we have no one there, that is immediately what administrators turn to, and not to their fault. We don't have anyone in these positions, and I've been in locals where they may have 30 or 40 openings that they can't fill, And those students need someone educating them. So they turn to computer programs and they turn to these online learning systems. And those are not the most effective way to help our students. And so I think that to me, that is very troubling that when we have this shortage of staff, the things that we turn to in order to try and still educate our students. Because listen, we have some of the top rated scores across the country here in New Jersey when it comes to our math scores and our English scores. And we want to stay that way. We want to be one of the top ranked schools in the nation. And we can't do that when we don't have educators and then we turn to online programs to teach our students. It is not the most effective way. I know there are circumstances that that may work for a student, but that is not something we should be turning to in public education. So to me, that is the number one. Back to that, we need qualified, good staff members. I'll say the other thing that I'm really passionate about is I think bringing trades back into our schools is so important to me because so often we had this mindset years ago that everybody should go to college. And I am not a firm believer in that. I believe some students, that is the path they should take, but not every student should go that direction. And we should make sure that we have the trades route for students to go into. And for so often, we push kids to the vocational schools, and we're seeing now that it becomes more and more difficult to get into those schools. And then they're only taking the top scoring students, they're not taking everyone. So I think that our schools need to open up and get more trades and vocational things back into the schools in order to create that pathway for our students. Because we all know how expensive college is. We all know the debt that people are going to acquire. So we don't want to push them in a direction that we know that is just going to take them down a hole of debt. So I am excited at Delsey, where I teach. These last few years, they have instituted some vocational courses that I think are really starting to help our students. We now have a plumbing course, an electrical course, two construction courses. I think that is what we really need to build back into our schools. And I feel like everything kind of goes in waves. We had so many years where we had these types of things in our schools. We moved toward vocational schools and we lost them. And now we're fighting to get them back. And that's tough when schools don't have a lot of funding. But I think it's so important for our students. It really doesn't do them justice to not have that route and that option.
Yeah, I definitely think bringing the trades is a big thing because I know how hard it can be for like being a student if you don't have the classes or courses that you want to take. It's just like you don't know anything, and when you get to college, it's gonna be like you don't need like a whole new world, like you don't even know anything. So, and also like with the teacher shortage, that could also be a struggle to kids too because I know that in my school, it's very hard for me to look up to a teacher because there's not many, like there's not a big diversity of teachers in my school. So it's hard for me to like connect and get on that like one-on-one teaching level that I would like to with my teachers. So do you have like anything like encouraging for those students or anything?
So I have a few things to say about that because to me, that is one of the most frustrating things because we all say it all the time. You can't you can't be what you don't see. And we have to create a better and a more diverse workforce. And when we talk about education, we don't have enough Black and Brown teachers, custodians, staff members working in our buildings for students. And that to me is the most unacceptable thing we've ever done is to not create a diverse workforce. And we have to do that when it comes to education. So I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that kills me. And I look at it as just a female in the science profession. So I know that going to college, getting a degree in chemistry, you don't see a lot of women in the science field. So to me, I wanted to make sure that I was standing in front of a room being the female so that I knew that I could connect to those female students to say, you can do this. You can go off and be a chemical engineer. You can go off and get your PhD in chemistry. Like you can do this. And I think that we have to make sure we're doing that when we talk about diversity. And so to me, we have to find a better way to recruit diverse members into our field. And I don't have all the answers for that, But just throwing out an interview and saying anybody that wants to apply can apply is not going to get us diverse candidates. So to me, that is not an acceptable way to do it. And it might be that we need to start going to historically Black colleges and making sure that we're recruiting from there in order to make sure we're getting a more diverse teaching force. Because I know at the elementary school level in the district I work in, there are 0 members of color working in that district. To me, that is unacceptable because, as your father said, we grew up together. We know that this is a diverse community. So why is it that we have teachers only white teachers working in that school? Like that means we are not doing a good job at recruiting and actually looking for educators to create a diverse workforce. So we need to change the way that we are putting out applications and that we're asking people to apply. And part of that also turns to working with students in order to train them to want to be educators. So that means creating a pathway where we say, listen, you want to be an educator? Let's help move you through that. And let's make sure that there are opportunities for you, that there are scholarships for you, that there is a way that we can bring you back to work into this community. Because I think that will also encourage a more diverse teaching staff.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be like, that's like one of the biggest things that students struggle with today. Like, even for guys too, you see like, most like ELA teachers, they're female and they don't really know like how to connect with them and stuff. So.
I ran into someone the other day and I asked what do you teach? That's like the common question when you talk to a fellow union member, what do you do in your school? And then they say a teacher and you say, what do you teach? So I met a gentleman who was a kindergarten teacher, Black man, kindergarten teacher. I'm like, you are like amazing. Like, because we so often don't see that. And we need more people like that in this profession.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump in here now. I have 2 questions before we wrap this up. And one is my famous question I love to ask everybody. But before I do that, any words of encouragement or advice for young people such as Symone that may be interested in getting into the field of education?
So I would say, don't be turned off by all the negative stuff I just said. I want you to think about what my mom said and talking about really training that next generation. Because to me, teaching is such an honorable profession. It truly is. And I look back now after 26 years and I think about all the students that I've taught and so many that I'm still in contact with that have gone off and gotten their PhDs and they're chemical engineers and they're working for these amazing companies. And to me, no other profession can say that. So I think that if you truly love working with young adults and young children, and you really want to make a difference in the future of their lives, this is the profession. Because I guarantee if all of us right now thought about who do we remember from our past, it is not the doctor or pediatrician that we had as a child. It's not someone else we ran into at some point, some professional athlete that we really don't know. All of us usually think about some teacher that we had that really inspired us to move in the direction that we moved. So to me, it's go into this profession because you truly can make a difference in the lives of hundreds upon hundreds of students. And that to me is what moves us forward for the next generation.
Powerful stuff right there. So here's my last question. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but it's kind of get to know you kind of question. If they made a movie about your life, what would the title be and who would play you?
Oh my God, what would the title be? And who I gotta pick somebody really good here. Who would the title be? Wow, you're really putting me on the spot. The other questions about education, I was on point.
He
He always throws these out. He just tries to get us all. I see how it is. All right, title of the movie. Who would play me? Um, I'm gonna say Reese Witherspoon would play me. Like I feel like we're about the same age.
Okay.
We're close. I've heard her recently talk about some really passionate things about women and really about how women need to step forward and they need to own and they need to make sure that they're out there and not accept being told that they're less. And to me, in the climate we're in right now, that is really important to me, that we have powerful women that are out there saying, I can make a difference and I refuse to sit on the sidelines. So how about my title will be, how about we go with Don't Sit on the Sidelines?
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Interesting.
Well, Tina, thank you for your time and spending some time with us, more specifically my daughter, who asked some really interesting questions, and I'm super proud of the work that she's doing. I'm trying to sway her into get into education, but she don't really know that. Or I mean, she's thinking about the journalism route, which I'm not mad at it as well. So, thank you again for your time. We definitely appreciate it.
No, thank you. And listen, we do need more journalists. I agree. But I am going to side with your father, and we absolutely need more educators. We need women like you coming into this field because that's going to make all the difference for our next generation. So I'm on board with him. I'm really sorry. You
Yeah.
can do journalist stuff on the side.
I think it's just dealing with the kids that turns me off to that.
You know what? I always thought that, but honestly, they're more fun than you think when you get into a classroom with them. And what I've really learned is if I go to the mall, which I feel like is an old thing now, or you go to the movies and like you would see a group of teenagers, you'd be like, oh God, please don't sit near me. Like you're gonna be annoying. But in the classroom, I absolutely love them. Like I love how interesting they are, the questions that they ask, the things that they want to talk about. And I think it's a whole different relationship in a classroom than it is like out on the streets. So I think you would love them.